Welcome to Africulture with yours truly, Larva McAfee, aka Nicole, with my special guest, Togbi Ngoyifia of Aflawu, Gakli, Grand Lomé, where we discuss Africulture. It is all about Africulture. Let's get it started. Hello and salut Indo Indi na Misiame. Hello and salut everybody. Thank you for coming back to Africulture. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. We are here again. It is another Sunday that we are grateful for. It is Sunday afternoon wherever you are. I pray that you are doing just fine. You're doing awesome this afternoon. You are just as grateful because, again, we get to see another day. You get to hear me. I get to see you. We get to have another day. So thank you so very much for being here, for your support. So today, we promised that Tugby was going to come back today. We were going to discuss the do's and don'ts of traditional marriage. And we are supposed to talk about, who you should marry on your father's side, your mother's side, and all of that traditionally. But as you know, it's been a few weeks now. We've been struggling with, connection issues in Lomé, issues in Ghana. So right now, we've been on all week and tried to fix this. And just, this afternoon, we still could not get Tugby on. But we are prepared. We're still going to talk about marriage because I have a replacement. And he, instead of talking about, traditional marriage, we're going to talk about marriage in America. official or civil marriage. You know what I mean? Because we are living here, right? So we are talking about the ones back home, traditional one. Even in here, we still do traditional marriages, right? So we want to talk about the one that is important as far as the legally, as far as, government is concerned in the countries that we live in. And it may not just be this country, but we want to talk about the civil part of, marriage. So you're not losing anything. You are in for a treat. So, ALFRED, AMUZU is going to be my special guest who's filling in for Tugby today. So you see how we did it, right? We're still talking about marriage. We are not getting away from it, but you just getting a little bit more indifferently. So you getting a little more today. So we are having some issues. So I'm gonna try and bring, because we have a lot to discuss today. And I'm just so grateful that ALFRED was in to fill in, because I was like, you are my lifeline here. I need you. And I am just so grateful that he's not in class, he's not in a party somewhere, he's not in Hawaii somewhere. He was able to to join and do this with me. So with that being said, I'm going to bring ALFRED in. Before I do need to introduce my people in a way. I don't want you guys to feel like I leave you out. I don't want them to feel like I leave them out. So miato miawezon kaka. Migbava we troya be mia pon poso endonti mia de ndokpo mpromet na mi semaine passée be mleja klo togbi lava mi la pon poso mariage nti game o latin gbenyon wo mani problème ameke o mi do la tendele mia be côté enia maternel côté paternel décision en pota e nou ko mi do la no meke mi do la deo alors pli et nous on pata mi do la ke discuter igbe voir si bele ke mi anto mi nya nene togbi be problème et connexion be problème je va sen donc ami o de pepe o troya mi no kamekaka mten yo pwe donc ALFRED AMUZU eni ape remplacement togbi be remplacement mu UAE be tonam donc mi ke be mi apon poso mariage nji voir mi la gba continuer so mariage nji seulement mi apon poso mariage civil nji mariage civil au lieu que mariage traditionnel kodo togbia mila blanc civil kodo ALFRED AMUZU. So I am very ejojinam to mle dakpena ALFRED king baba va kame am le dakpene bena ete ho enuya na mi ebele java kame kodo mi a discuter nuya yemnya gbekebele ja do voix egbekebele ja do matin ma expliquer na mi ne yibem do eni avegbe o alom do egengbe o ebe c'est français mi akobela tindo français ma ne yebe doa Ne kebe do ma traduire na mi voix Alfred le java e moaji ne mi akobele ke no mi ayido ma donc a mi no moaji mi gba afle popo na mere mi jesi amero mi aholo ko le ka me wande kuku mi so li an so do ne wa chan wa joindre ne mi a discuter nu ya parce que enu yo ele vevere surtout mi ame ko desson mi ame ko npo desson amere pepe ele vevere be mi a discuter nu yo donc information vevere be ni donc dak pe na mi be mi no kame donc makplo Alfred Vane ba introduced edo kwe na mi ne mi ayejilo akpe na mi kaka. I was telling everybody, guys, please invite anyone who is not on the call, invite people, share the link, try to join in and tune in because this is important for everybody. If you're married, it involves you. If you have not been married, it involves you. If you're a young person, wherever you are, it involves you. Everybody needs to hear this. So invite anyone. If you're listening to me right now, invite anyone, share the link, make sure that you're tuning. Make sure you let me know where you're joining from so that we can give a shout out to you. So thank you. I'm going to bring Alfred in and see what he has for us. So for Alfred.
Bonsoir, my friend.
There we go.
Let me start from there. How are you today?
You're going to start with that. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking over, replacing Tugby right now. And thank you for allowing us to talk about the same topic, marriage, as we are going to talk about traditionally. Now we're going to talk about the other side of it. So thank you very much for being my lifeline, and I appreciate you being here. So Alfred, a lot of people don't know you. A lot of people may know you. So I want you to introduce yourself to people who may not know you.
Right. So my name is ALFRED AMUZU, and I was born in Aflao. My parents are one from Ghana, the other one is from Benin. So my dad is from Benin, my mom is from Ghana. Grew up in Aflao, went to school in Aflao. I live in Washington, D.C. now. I'm an accountant by trade, so it's amazing that your accountant is about to give you marital advice. But mate chaka gbealo.
Oten chaka.
Yo, I want Glen wife. If you lay school in North Dakota, you Siana Toby financial secretary. Nicole, Amikumila Dominic do. Kebe jobe and make la vani be amyamjava be yom lambe onil Nicole you and you mating building.
Amen to that. So Alfred, how long have you been a financial secretary for Siana?
So Siana has a term of 3 years. So I've been Siana's financial secretary now for 2 years going.
Okay.
My term will end when we go to Dallas. And
Dallas.
I think you can only do it twice. So I would decide whether I want to run again term. Or
Okay.
So we'll see about that.
Okay. So how is that going?
Oh, it's going fine. I mean, ever since I've started working in that capacity, we've done very well. Starting from Houston, we were able to raise some significant amount of money. Almost about in the 60s, thousands. Then we boost that up into over almost 100 and something. I don't have the figures in front of me, so I can't tell you. But we did raise a lot in.
We did a lot in Atlanta. We did a lot in Houston, Atlanta, and then Denver.
And even Denver, we did better than the last two places. So we keep breaking records. We keep raising a lot of fun, and it's not my money. It's money of all the viewers that are watching us today who continue to support Siana, and we are always grateful for their contributions and their support. In my capacity, my job is to account for every single dollar that has been sent to Siana, and also make sure that we are putting it into a very good use. So it's been going fantastic, and I think it's a dream job for me. I enjoy doing it.
Because you're an accountant. So you're an accountant by trade. So it's a dream job for you. You know what? It's not every day that people hear that this is a dream job for me. So So you saying it's a dream job for you. I'm gonna believe you that it is a dream job for you because it's your trade. So I'm glad that you do that, and thank you very much for taking this. Now we're going to talk about marriage. Can you tell people why you are qualified to talk to people about marriage? Tell them.
I don't know if I'm qualified yet, but we'll see,
just
right?
tell them why you are able to answer. What, because you say you're going to school right now. I want people to hear what you're doing in school right now.
Yeah, so I'm in school, a law school, to become a lawyer. And so I've had, family law classes where we talked about various nuances in the beautiful relationship we call marriage. And so when Togbi is not available to give us all the traditional nuances, I feel like maybe it's a good time for us to also look at those of us who live in America. Even if you are not living in America, whether you're in Ghana, Togo, you still getting to marry. There are things we call pre-marital agreements. Some call it, in short, prenuptial agreements, right?
Yep.
What are they? What are the implications? And even if you get into marriage, what are some of the legal, things that we should all be mindful of? So I feel like, I am quasi-qualified. I'm not fully qualified yet because I'm still a student.
Quasi-qualified to take that.
But I am quasi-qualified to discuss
At least you are more qualified than me. So that's good. So guys, what we're going to do right now, we're going to talk about, preparing to marry. So we are saying preparing to marry. We're going to the premarital controversies. And we are going to talk about premarital agreement. We're also going to talk about annulment. Remember, we talked about that traditionally with Togbi last week, and restriction on entry into a marriage, because sometimes we just get in without thinking about, the legal part and what can we do? What should we not do? We just jump in without knowing all of this. So I don't know we're going to get to all of them. If we don't get to all of them, ALFRED is going to come back. We're going to finish it. But these are a few of them that we are going to be touching today. So before we touch into, we carry on to the first one. ALFRED, I think let's just take a quick break. We'll be right back, and then we're gonna dive in. But until then, please don't go anywhere. Stay right there. Miato mi be mi le Japonpo ALFRED talk blana mi say mi le Japonpo so mariage ji enuko mi dola wa nuko mi dola no wo gado mo mi dona mariage me mi gbe dogo nusu kwa alo mi dogo nyono akwa ejile po mura mi po mi gba bunata me so enuke la jo alo nuke ma gba ba jo implication nuko mi dola signo en préparation pota mi bunentio donc ALFRED le ja expliquer na me ALFRED bena elle est school présentement le ja ni enia leke mi onema ALFRED, what do we call lawyers again? What do you call lawyers? I can't remember. Le
français va alors
vegbeme.
Well, that's a good one. Hopefully somebody watching will give us that before we leave, right?
Donc ameko ina enia justice I know justice ameko wona nu ana mi emleji nyemle donko donc ami donko ina mi donc ALFRED enu kebele janyewa donc elle légalement elle a expliqué nous on ami donc mi le japo ebe discussion mi ja ofifi donc ami gba ya filipo ko mi no kame mi a take break viticule kware mi la trova izane lo
Come and have a unique experience in Dallas, Texas.
Ago na miapete milemiakpe bemiva 32nd annual Sienna Convention le Dallas Fort Worth. Dallas. Big D. Miva yava pongtepe.
Aha. Sienna 2025. Mano bobo edolo. Miva midwaza. We were me at the Cornwall Friday evening. Sunday me our picnic. Me our church service. And all les zanzazata miniva.
Tata nyo prevo fonyo mi do bonso anamilo. Mi do bonso anami apata mi de buku na mi be mi kro mi ape famille o valo. Mi kro mi ape famille o mi afa po Dallas da. Mi ado azan. Azalo.
Azase.
Azale
Okay. So Alfred, I don't think anybody heard us yet, but I know what we're gonna do is we're gonna say mileji enu ale gengbe me mileji avocat le gengbe me avocat le français me avocat et voir mileji le gengbe me donc ani mi don kwa mi na mianya lo. Okay, so Alfred, we go into the first thing we said premarital controversies. Can you explain to that what that is and why is it important?
Yeah, so traditionally it used to be that people would promise each other that I will marry you, sometimes they exchange gifts for that reason. I might say, I'm giving you my beautiful car, or I'm giving you a ring. I think growing up we used to call this promise rings.
Promise ring, yeah.
Right. So what happens if the person who you promised to marry refused to marry you?
Right.
Yeah, so it used to be that you could take them to court. It used to be that you could take them to court and sue them for failing to honor the promise that they've given to you, right?
Right.
Now, it's just like any other agreements, right? But then there is also a little difference. So any other agreement, the two parties entering into agreement have to be mature enough. They have to be at least more than 18 years old. We call that capacity. You have to have the capacity to get into a binding agreement.
Right.
The second thing we expect for an agreement like that to be enforceable is that there has to be some consideration. Something has to exchange hands, right? So if the person has given you a ring, what happens to the ring, right? When that person breach, in other words, when that person decides that they are no longer going to marry you,
right?
What? There are several schools of thought. There are schools of thought that says you get your ring back. There are others say you don't get the ring back.
You don't get it back, yeah.
But that is not currently very prevalent. It used to be these promises were enforceable, but nowadays, the courts usually don't enforce promises to marry.
Okay.
So I think everybody can think everybody can, at least relax a little
now
bit.
And say, okay, I'm good. Okay.
But it just means that, depending on the state you are in, right? So be familiar with your state laws. A specific state may decide to enforce that depending also on the type of assets involved. So be just careful making these promises and breaking hearts of young ladies or young men when especially you're not ready for them.
You're not ready for it. So basically, we need to check in our state, whichever state that you are in. If you promise somebody, I'm going to marry you, even though it's not written anywhere, just by giving you verbal agreement and the person giving you this promise, ring, there is something, there might be something into that. So you need to check on your state, make sure that they're not going to come back. They're not going to drag you to court and say you owe me. But one thing that I say, I don't know what time is it? It's 4:00 and this is an adult show, right? So and back home, when you said that somebody give you a promise ring and they're like, you have to turn it back, you have to give it back to me. You know what I used to say, they used to say that, and I'm gonna say this, so that means there's no way you're not gonna, you give it, you cannot get it back.
Right.
You cannot be asking it back because the girl gave you their body. This is precious body, so she earned it.
Assuming she gave you the body, right? What if she didn't give you no body?
That's different. If she gave you the body, normally you're not supposed to be giving the body anyway before you get it, right? So that's the whole point. But when you give women, when they get that promised land, they're so excited. It's like, oh, we got this and we got it. And then they start giving you whatever it is you want. And then you're like, no, I need it back. Like, no, if you do that, like, no, I mean, you got more than just this ring. So I cannot give it back to you. But we are talking about legally. We are talking about what could happen in your state.
I think what usually makes this even a topic today is that, let's say I promise to get married to you and therefore I give you my house or my land, right? And I die before I am able to, consummate that promise. Then what happens to that land? What happens to, because think about it, This is an Q3 contract. So basically, it's got to be executed in the future. It's not executed right now.
Right now.
We are consuming the fruit of that contract or that agreement currently. We are going to consume it in the future. So if I die before the contract is executed, what does that mean to your family, who perhaps are in line to inherit that property that you've given to the person? So you can see where the controversy is actually.
That is definitely that is an issue. Because before it happens, because you already know if it's not written somewhere,
right?
If you didn't write it, if you didn't sign it, the family is they're not going to allow you, because they were like, this is just verbally. There's a verbal, there was no agreement. So there's no way they're going to say, oh, we're going to let our son, his house belong to you. So that's why it's important to, I know in certain state, there are certain time, if you live together for a certain time period, whether it's written or not, the law consider you as being, something is going to be going to you, or you are entitled to something. But if it's not in that state, if you're depending on the family, you may not get anything because you don't have anything to prove for it. So I can see why it is definitely a big controversial. So we really have to think about it. And also, when you get that promise ring, or that verbal promise, how long? I mean, how long is that it should take? There should be a limit to it. You know what? You can't just have this promise for 5 years and just be sitting there. You know what I mean? So there has to be a limit to that as well. What do you say to that?
I'll leave that one to Togby, right? That's Togby's question.
Okay, all right. So our next topic is premarital agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, premarital agreement, what we usually now call prenums, right? It's becoming very prevalent. It didn't used to be the case. It used to be the case that when you get married to a woman, that you take care of the lady. I mean, you're changing the lady's name to your name.
Right.
So many things are changing to where even if the lady accumulates properties during the marriage, the man has sort of ownership of that property and is able to use it anyhow.
Right.
He wishes. That is traditionally, but now it's not the same. Right now, there are common law states that would, allow for joint ownership of properties. There is also this thing is escaping me. When I remember, I'll let you know. But there's common laws that kind of now recognizes, dual ownership. The woman has the same rights over the properties as the man has. But people are getting married late these days. So before they get married, you realize that a lot of the millennials are accumulating a lot of property. Some have all kinds of things, houses, cars, name it. So what happens to those properties when you get married? Right? Another thing that is happening is people are remarrying. People who marry, divorce, and then they have to marry again, and they have children, and they may have inherited some things, or they may have taken some properties away from the previous marriage through dissolution, right?
Right.
What happened to that property when they get married again? So prenuptial agreement is also a contract. And the reason you sign it is to kind of determine how your rights will play, whether at the dissolution of the marriage. Because guess what? Marriage is going to end in one way or the other. It's going to end when you die, or it's going to end by, when you guys decide to divorce. Yes. Now, when it ends, properties that have been accumulated before and during the marriage becomes a subject for evaluation and distribution. So the question is, would you protect that property in a way before you get into that dissolution stage, or you just want to get to the dissolution stage and let the court handle it? So a lot of, wise counsel out there is that, get into an agreement about how these things are going to happen before they happen. Let me drop in a quick line there. The only thing you cannot agree on is custody and child support. you can agree on how that is going to be distributed when you are in, divorce situation or when something happened. But everything else is open for negotiation. So how does this thing happen? There's something we call the statute of fraud, which is like one of the statutes that were passed during the colonial days. Actually, this happened in Britain, and it requires that certain agreements are captured on paper. Like an agreement to sell land has to be on paper. If it is not on paper, it's not going to be enforced.
Okay.
An agreement to distribute properties during dissolution of a marriage has to be on paper. So the statute of fraud requires that if you are getting into an agreement prior to marrying someone, that it has to be written on paper.
Okay.
So if it's not written, if it's just word of mouth, you guys talked about it, no, it's not enforceable. It has to be in writing.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. So there are certain formalities you have to go through. Stop me and ask me a question anytime. But there are certain formalities that we have to go through before we actually have a legally enforceable prenuptial. Now, what are those formalities? Number one, we said it has to be in writing. There is a law called the Uniform Pre-Marital Agreement Act.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that existed. Very nice.
I did not know. No.
Yeah. And it provides in section 2 that consideration is not required. When you're going into contracts, like I said earlier on, the agreement that you are promising to marry somebody, you have to give something to that person. It could be a ring, it could be a car. That cements the agreement. We call that consideration, right?
Right.
What you are paying for that agreement. But when it comes to prenuptial agreement, you don't pay anything. The payment is the marriage.
Exactly. Yeah, the payment is the marriage.
The payment is the marriage.
Right,
So those are the two formalities. One, there is no consideration. So, like if you compare prenuptial agreement with every other agreement, all other agreements for them to be legally enforceable requires a consideration. But premarital agreements, no consideration is required. Now, premarital agreement is required to be in writing. All other agreements can be in writing or not in writing, unless it's one of those that are forbidden by the statute of fraud.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any question about that. Do you? Because otherwise, I would like to talk about requirements for it to be valid. What does it need to be valid? I mean, the fact that we get into premarital agreement doesn't mean it's valid.
So
right?
the thing, what I wanted to say was, when we hear, most people, when we hear premarital agreement, we just think about one side is filthy rich.
Right.
We talk about automatically, we're like, okay, the woman is trying to prevent the man from having whatever in case, or the man is trying to prevent the woman from having whatever it happens in case, but it's not always the case. It is to protect each other. So that's why I wanted to put it out there, because every time we hear premarital, we women like, hell no, don't do it. Don't do it. But it is a reason for it. And it could protect both of you. But we know that majority of the time is because the parents like, that woman is a whole old gold digger. You have to get this, you have to do that. But it's not necessarily. So we just have to make sure that we don't always, when we hear that, we don't jump into conclusion that is because the woman is rich trying to protect her assets, or the man is rich trying to protect her assets. It could just be protecting both of you. Well. So it's
usually protecting both of you, because I mean, if you witness a divorce, that is not the time where, I mean, I haven't been divorced before, so I'm just saying, in divorce cases, knock on wood, right? In divorce cases, this is not a time that your mind is the clearest, right? For you to actually be determining whether you are asking for the proper things in assets distribution, because after some years you may have accumulated some property, right? But the right time to talk about who takes what is not when you are getting divorced. At that time, we probably hate each other.
Of course, you're not going to have any agreement.
Right.
You can't agree on things.
So when you think about that, what do you think is the best time to actually discuss who takes what?
Well, it is when you're starting, but at the same time,
Right.
Is when you're starting, but at the same time, when you're starting, sometimes you're just starting fresh.
Right.
You don't have all these things that you're going to accumulate later. So you only have a little bit, or sometimes, you know, some people are fortunate. They have enough to they can decide on. But sometimes you don't know how life is going to turn into. So you don't know everything, because some people do not do the premarital agreement. And then later they realize, oh, the man just got rich. You know, he's fortunate now. Or the woman, the woman is fortunate now.
Right.
Should we do it now? So my question is, can you do it in the middle of the marriage? Or do you have to be before you start? So that would be one of my questions.
Right. The one you do after you marry is called the post-nuptial.
Oh, there's a post-nuptial. I didn't know that one. Okay.
Yeah, the post-nuptial is really hard to actually put together, because, you know, the parties at that point are like, you know, we already married, so there's no pressure on anybody to actually sign anything. But you see, before you married, it's a lot easier, because, you know, this is the agreement. You sign it, we get married. We don't sign it, we don't get married. All right. And people will say it leads to divorce. It leads to, because you are contemplating divorce even at the initial stage of, but that is not.
Right. You're thinking about your assets even before the beginning. That's why I'm saying we have to leave the assets out of it. But majority of the time, they do it because of assets. A lot of people do it because of that.
Definitely, right? Because what happens to women mostly, once the baby starts coming up in a relationship, the woman becomes the homemaker. They are mostly at home taking care of the child.
Right.
The man is out there working. And we don't usually, you know, give the necessary credit that the women deserve.
The work that they're doing at home. Yeah.
The work they are doing at home don't get the necessary. I would say I'm the one bringing the money, so everything belongs to me.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be the case, right?
No.
So, I mean, if it goes to the court will distribute everything equally, because the woman's effort is just as important as yours.
Right. That's
Everybody's on Facebook looking at us. Antoinette Ifwa, I see you too. Thanks for watching. Please share the link so others can watch.
Yes, please share.
All right. So it's important that, I mean, before you get into the relationship, you kind of disclose, you know, what you own, what you don't own, so that it doesn't become a problem. And so the best time to actually do it, in short, is before you get married. Before you get married. And the way you do it is not to say, oh, I have asset number A, number B that I would take, and then you would take this. You don't want to name specific things. If you have some specific things before you get into the marriage, yes, you can name them. But guess what? Some of those things may appreciate during the marriage. Imagine imagine that I have a land before we got into marriage, before I married to a person, my wife. The land at the time we were getting married was about worth $100,000. The time of marriage dissolution, if the assets or the land has risen to maybe say $1 million,
right.
What happens to that appreciation in the value? So the way you write that is, consider some percentages. If we accumulate this, amount of properties, you take some percentage, I take some percentage, or this land that I, have before getting into the marriage, it's something I inherited from my family and have some sentimental value. We grew up on that. I don't want to sell it and give you half. So that needs to stay in the family. So, I mean, by all means, get with your lawyer and they'll be able to craft one for you specifically.
To do that, I think that is very, very important, though, because it is very, very important. We women, and I'm not going to say, I know some people do know, but we, like I said before, when we hear this, it's like, we started like, no, we started even fighting and getting negative about this. So knowing that this is not just because he doesn't want his assets, you to have his assets, it's just to protect you. So to knowing the protection part of it for both of you, so that we don't want anything to happen. We want you to stay married. But in case something happens, we know how crazy it gets, because you don't want to see him. You don't want to be in the same room with him. At one point, the paper is there. Or the lawyer is going to look at, okay, this is what you agreed on. It's going to be easy. It's a win-win for everybody. But I know it is not easy. I get it. People will say it's easier said than done, but I think it's really, really important for us to understand what it is, versus just hearing the name of it. Understanding what it is very, very important. So saying about all of this, even the land that you said, the example, because we don't think about it. The land is just 100,000 today or 10,000 today, but it's going to change. So that documentation is going to say, no matter what it is at the time, in case something happens, this is your percentage. This is the percentage you're going to get. And you agree and you sign it. So I think it's very, very important that we understand and we know the implication and what this really does for both sides. Both sides.
I mean, even those who are worried about signing something like that, let me tell them something that would give them a little bit of comfort, right? Because these agreements are not always valid.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
we want to know
not
that.
valid, but there are reasons why they will not be valid. So let's go through those. So what makes these agreements valid? A premarital agreement is valid if one, it provides full disclosure, which means if you hide some assets that you did not disclose at the time we signed a premarital agreement, the agreement is not valid.
Oh, okay.
2, it is valid only if it is fair and reasonable. So you can't have an agreement that says, when your land appreciates for, let's say, 1 million, you only give me 20,000.
Right.
That is not fair. That's not reasonable.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It is not valid if it is entered into involuntarily.
Okay. So you have to be all for it. Okay.
Yeah. So we can have, for instance, a situation where we are getting married, and on the day of the marriage, you bring me an agreement as a premarital agreement to sign. One, I wouldn't even have enough time to review it.
To read it, right.
I wouldn't have enough time to hire a lawyer to look at it for me.
Right.
So I may have entered it, but will be done under duress because I want to marry you.
Yeah.
That agreement is invalid.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything else, or that's it? It's just
those are the three main ones that I can remember. So the three things are: it has to be full disclosure, it has to be fair and reasonable, and it has to be entered into voluntarily.
Wow.
Now, the voluntary entering into it voluntarily, we can expand that to cover things like there has to be some time between when the agreement is drafted and when you actually get married. It can be a week before. You wouldn't have time to read the agreement, so it should give the other partner some time to review it.
Right.
If it is drafted by a lawyer for maybe the husband, the wife should get their own lawyer.
Right.
Don't use your husband's lawyer.
Right.
Because your husband's lawyer doesn't represent you.
No, exactly.
So your interest will not be represented in that case.
Wow, I didn't know this part. So I am so glad that you brought this up, because sometimes you think that because the girl side just think that they just forced her into this. She wasn't aware. She didn't know this was happening. So I am glad that you bring this up, that it needs to, you can't hide. And the good thing about it, if you do hide something, and I think, it's watching too many movies, but if you hide something, that's why when this happened, you see in the movies, the girl will go and hire an attorney or hire a private investigator. And if they find something that you hidden before, you didn't disclose, you are out, So I think that is very important to know that if you do want to do this, it needs to be truthful. You need to disclose everything. Now, it's possible that you may not think of there are certain things that you need to include. You might think that there are certain things that shouldn't be part of it. That's why you need an attorney. That's why you have to have an attorney to help you. So I'm glad that it needs to be truthful. It needs to, that means full disclosure. And it needs to be fair. Both of you can't just say that, it has to be fair.
Let's expand on fairness a little bit, right?
Okay, good.
The question of fairness is going to be, when do we determine fairness? Should we determine fairness at the time we are writing the contract?
Or later.
Or when the divorce is happening?
That I would like to know that one, because
it depends. It depends on what state you are in, right? So some states will say that, if you draft the agreement at the time you are getting married, and we determine fairness then, and we don't know the extent of your properties, then it's probably not going to work, right? Because you could say that agreement could say something as simple as everything I bring to the marriage goes to me, everything you brings to the marriage goes to you. Let's say we get married and you become a homemaker because we have about 20 children, right?
Yeah, that's not
So you
fair.
It's not fair. So if we determine fairness at the time we executed the agreement,
then it's still not going to be fair at the end of the day.
It's not going to be fair for you.
So how do we determine that? So how do the lawyers, how will they look at it and say, this is fair?
There are certain factors we look at.
Okay.
So the factors they look at that, you look at the parties' respective worth, right?
Okay.
So when we say respective worth, what it means is, what does each party have in terms of properties, right? And so this is where, again, if at the beginning, let's say you were just a law student, right? Before we got married, and then all of a sudden you're a big lawyer, then the woman will be fighting for that fairness to be determined close to the end of the marriage instead of the beginning of the marriage. Another factor we look at is respective ages, right? Let's say I am about 80 years old, but my wife is
she's 50
younger,
something.
50 something.
Yeah.
It looks like I only have a few more years before I check out. So my needs may not be as extenuating and as much as hers. By rough calculations, she might have another 20 to 30 years of life.
Right.
So that also has to be taken into consideration when determining what is fair or what is not fair.
Wow.
Another one is respective intelligence, literacy, and business acumen. So how intelligent is the other party? Are they able to earn income on their own after the marriage? Are they business people? So we look at all these things that can, make somebody worth money, etc., in determining whether the prenuptial agreement is fair or it's not fair. And sometimes we also look at family ties. Are you from a rich family?
Right. Or are you just gonna be flat on your ass when this happens? So it does make sense.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense. And that's why I think it's super, super important that before you sign this, don't just say, oh, I love him. I trust him. No, you don't know what's gonna happen in 2 years. So you still need to get your own attorney to look at this. If you're going through this right now, we encourage you to get your own attorney to look at this. Don't just say, because a few years later, you're going to say, oh, you're not going to be using the L word, you're going to be using the H word, in a few years, because it does happen in life. You know what I mean? So,
well, by all means, whoever you get married to, make sure you love them first.
You need to love them. You need to know them. You need to trust them. You need to love them. You need to trust them.
Trust them. But beyond that, we don't want you to be full of heart but empty head.
Right.
Use your head at the same time.
You need to
think
love,
about,
feel, but then think. Feel and think. You don't just want to do it with the heart. You don't want to do it with the head either. You want to do it with all of it. So,
but the good news is, prenuptial agreement has increased 20-fold. It didn't used to be the case. Yeah, people are actually getting prenuptial left and right.
Right. Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Because it's helping them. Because they're probably hearing that it's helping. At the end of the day, it
helps, right? So that when it comes to dissolution of the marriage, there isn't too much to fight about,
Right.
Because the trust me, the fight is actually with the property distribution. People may hate each other. At the time you're getting divorced, you may have already not wanted to be in the same room. You may have not, probably disagree on so many different things. But what causes most of the fight is, custody issues. Where is the child going to stay? Or who's going to get what property? So if you can get the property one settled ahead of time, child custody will become, the only thing we probably need to worry about.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So, guys, if you're watching us, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching, please invite others to join. We need more of you to hear this message. It is very, very important so that we can get all the wahala out of the way. So that when you are getting to your this special day, your marriage, you have peace of mind. You really have peace of mind because it's really, really important. So, ALFRED, I think we're gonna talk about annulment, and we are going to talk about restriction on early entry into marriage. So those are the two things that we're gonna talk about. But I do want us to take a I did see this. I'm gonna share this and see if you know if you have any idea, because I saw this dance. It was sent to me. I want to share it to you and see if you understand what this dance is, what is coming from. Let me find it. Because this is traditional. This is we're talking about, our free culture, talk about culture here. I need somebody to tell me what that dance is. Do you know what that dance is, ALFRED? You seen it before?
Oh, this is my first time. It looks like our people haven't stopped innovating how we celebrate our culture. So
I know
it's new to me.
It is new to me too, because it is happening in Togo. It happened, I think it's this month or last month. Yeah. So they're doing this, and I never seen this, and I'm like, wait, and they send it to me. I'm like, okay, this is a new one. So those of you who are watching, if you know what this dance means, I'm sure Togby probably knew what this is because he was there. But some of you who do not, you watching this, you know what it is. Put it in the comments for us. Teach us something. Let us know what this is so that we can learn. But it's very, very interesting. I'm like, if you're on your knees like that, by the time you get there, I'm like,
your ways to be given up, right?
But it's crazy the number of dances that we have and the meaning of them and all these tradition stuff. It's crazy. I just love it.
And we don't take our time to actually learn about them. You
know? We don't take the time to learn. We see it, and then we just pass on to something else, and we don't understand.
And that is why I'm so happy about this show, because you kind of dedicated to re-exposing us to our own traditions, which is good.
Right, a little bit. So I'm gonna this one. This one you saw. This one. You know what that means.
I know that. Yeah.
Okay. So that one, we understood that. And I had no idea what it meant until I was doing the culture thing. And then they had to explain it to me.
What did they say it means?
It means that when the slaves, when they were getting the slaves, I'm going to do my version. So whoever is listening to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong. At the time of the slavery back home, when the white men were coming to get people, to get the slaves, I think there was a war or something that was happening. And they came to, they were there, and the village, our people, they told them they blew up a building. They blew up a building to show that something happened, like an explosion, to tell the white men that there was an explosion that killed people. That was the mentality. If you have that explosion, fake explosion, then when the white men came, they saw the thing happen in them. For them, these people either died or they survived. So when they came back, the white men came back. What they did was they were dancing. They danced backward. They went backward. They walked backward, so that when the white man comes, they will think that they went this way. They went through. They went this way, but they danced backward. So they danced backward as they were doing it painfully. That's why when we are dancing it, you feel it like you're in pain, because you're losing your land. You're losing, so you dance it with pain and you go backwards. So when they come, they will think that you went this way, but in truth,
you actually went different way. Yeah. So I think I heard it in a different way.
Okay, I'm sure you heard it a different way. I don't know if my version is the right version, but I know the truth is hiding somewhere in there.
So what I was told about that dance is that, remember, the traditional Benin has some of the greatest walls, right? We call it the Great Wall of Benin.
Benin, yeah.
I'm like, Anyoko.
Okay.
I love Agokoli, of course, from stories is that he hasn't treated our people very well.
Right.
So they decided to leave. I
heard that too. Yeah.
Until Glia Bobo.
Bobo.
And then one day, somebody's calling me. I shouldn't be. Sorry. Until one day, Glia Bobo Kakayo over Jani. Okay. Kayo shimle ngochea.
You only thrown in here. I think that might be your version, might be the truth one. I think that's your version. I think I'm confusing mine with something else. I think what you said is so true. I remember the pouring of the water. So they were putting water on the walls so that the wall can soften, so that it can fall. Yeah. So, we were smart. We are still smart. White man does not know how smart we were, or even Agokoli himself. So we were pouring. So just to translate, they were putting water on the wall day after day. They didn't know. They had no idea they were doing this. When it got softer, it fell. So it got mushed. So when it happened, when you see the water on there, so they were going backward. And when they woke up, when they got the next day, they were like, oh, they went this way. So they went this way, but in truth, they were like backward. They went, they were still there. So I think that's your version. I may be confusing it with this.
Yeah, that's
even though
what I
did the dance, I think that your version was the right version.
Right.
So, so that is just amazing to understand. We see certain dances, and some of them we do them, but we don't understand them. Just like now, I got them confused, right? So there are a lot of dances that we see our people do, and we don't understand it. But there is a reasoning behind all of it that we do. Anything that we do, there's always a reason behind it. And I think it's just important that when we see, let's ask somebody. When you see something, ask somebody and they can explain it to you. So I'm going to keep this one, and I'm going to ask Togby. He's going to have to educate.
Exactly. Ask Togby. I'm interested to know what he says.
What that is. So guys, thank you very much for coming back again. I am here with ALFRED AMUZU. He is my lifeline here. We are talking about marriage. we talked a lot about, we talked a lot so far. Right now, we are going to dive into annulment, and then we are going to talk about the restriction on entry into a marriage. So those are the two things that we have on, that we're going to go on. And I know this is not the end of it. When ALFRED comes back again, we're going to have more to talk about, definitely, and have fun doing it. So if you're online, you have not invited anybody, invite somebody, send them the link. Even if they don't join, if you don't think they're going to join, still send them the link. And obviously this is recorded. You can watch this later, but the goal for this show is to educate. We want to educate each other so that we don't fall into these situations when it's impossible at the end of the day. So we are not just doing this just because we love to talk, even though I love to see, ALFRED online. We are not just doing that because we want to just see each other and just have fun, but we are doing this so that we can all learn together, and be better people and do better. So I encourage you guys to share with everyone. Miato akpena mi be mi gba trova kamelo bena ewe wan kem so fiwa ne mi nya ewe ke be nya mi glanam mi na manya ne mi po ya pre ntocha mi nya mi so do commentaire mi ne mi expliquer na mi parce que garo mole nya be we opota ke mi duna explication on e me voix mim se na gomo surtout mi o ke jo ho mi le edu yo vode ami se na nu sugbon gomo même tocha mi anto ki mi la hoya et donc les mis sénégomo donc à mi le globe na il est important mais mi ano se mi abi tradition ne edu ewedele ndele mi le wa e mi le pe ami no bio mi no fion mi ano no ga me ami la ten fion de vio chan o la sinkui ga me ane mi gba le wa de vio chan la expliquer na wa chan wa be vio donc à mi abi tradition mi le ja ku et la continuer. Donc, mi le kamea, me le kame kudo mi partager, mi partager lien na mo chama do kame ne wa expliquer. Mariage ben ya ke mi le blanc, elle est vraiment important. Elle est très 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 important parce que garo moa eni o jona, ye mi prepare mi ado ko wa mi la do problème, mi dona problème compliqué. Mais entiare et nous vevere ben mi le fion mi anono, m'de mi le tona mi be mi a onuyo, mi le fion mi anono entiare. Mi partager na me potio chanwa nyang ke mi le discuter les fialo. Donc mi trova fifi. ALFRED mi le ja pomposo eni annulment.
Let's do restrictions first. Then we'll do annulment to close on annulment. Yeah.
Close on annulment. Okay. So talk to us about restriction of on entry into a marriage.
Right. So there are some restrictions on entering into marriage. Some of them are constitutional. So the Constitution places some limits on who can marry. Mm-hmm. But here's the background. I want to be seeing your face so we can be talking to you, right?
Oh, okay.
unless you're
already talking by yourself. I'm giving you the whole page. Okay.
I want, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the background is that there are certain rights that we call natural rights that are born with us. Like marriage happens to be one of them. So if you really look into the United States Constitution, there isn't anywhere that it mentioned marriage. Marriage is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution.
Oh, really?
So then the question is, if it is not in the Constitution, where did we find that right? That is because even the people who were writing the Constitution were married then. So they couldn't write a document that put restriction on
it wouldn't be fair.
Something that they were already enjoying themselves, right? It wouldn't be fair. That's why we call them natural rights. They naturally come with us. Sometimes you might hear it be called fundamental rights, right?
Okay.
So now, the marriage is actually within the state's laws. So states have authority over who gets married. So you marry at a state level. You don't marry at a federal level. It's a state law that regulates marriage.
Right.
So whenever the state is restricting marriage, we say the state is taking an action in adverse to marriage, it has to meet the constitutional test of whether there is a restriction on a right that is fundamental. So if the restriction that the state wants to impose is on a fundamental right, the state needs to do a couple of things in order to impose that restriction. And what we call that they have to go through what we call a street scrutiny. So there has to be a high level of protection for the individual's freedom to marry. So we have to ensure that before a state can restrict your marriage, there has to be a substantially related, that restriction has to be substantially related to an important government objective.
Okay.
All right.
Government objective. Okay.
Yeah. Let's say the government's objective is that there is a certain tribe that has some killer disease in them, right?
Okay.
That we don't want them to marry people within our state because they would spread that killer disease.
Right.
So then it means the state has a very important objective. And the restriction that they are imposing on those individuals to marry is related to that objective. So the goal for any restriction on a fundamental right is that the state that is taking the action has to ensure that action is substantially related to an important government objective.
That's what that means. Okay.
So what are some of the restrictions we've seen in the past? We've seen racial restrictions. Like you couldn't marry a person because they are of a different race. So then the question you ask yourself is, what important governmental objective is that restriction serving?
Right.
It doesn't serve any important governmental objective.
No.
There was a case called Loving versus Virginia.
Okay.
It's a couple if you're familiar with the Virginia, Maryland, DC area, these are like really adjacent cities or states. You can, in 5 minutes be in Virginia, Maryland, in DC. So Virginia has a law that we call it misogynist laws, which says you as a black person cannot be married to a white person, or there's no interracial marriages. Virginia had that law before.
Wow, okay.
And so this couple, but DC, which is District of Columbia, not a state on its own, has a law that anybody can marry. So these two individuals lived in Virginia. They crossed the water, the Potomac, to go into DC, got married. By the time they came into Virginia, they were arrested.
Really?
Yes. They were arrested. That is the case of Loving versus Virginia. And this is where the ruling came down that race cannot be used as a basis for restricting marriage across all states. And that is the reason being that race has no substantial governmental interest to cause. Right. The second thing, the Constitution restricts or allows and prevents states from using as a means of restricting marriage is poverty. You can't say because somebody's poor, they should not marry to somebody who's rich.
That's true.
So you wouldn't be denying marriage on that basis.
Right.
And then, of course, we all know about the same-sex ones.
Yeah.
It used to be the case that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Right.
Until, if you like me to tell you the story.
I mean, people will want to hear the story because there are people who don't know. So
yeah, until a case called Lawrence versus Texas came up. So this is a guy in Texas. Texas has the sodomy, the anti-sodomy law that says, two men or two women can be having a natural carnal knowledge of each other.
Right.
So a police officer was responding to a crime in a neighboring, in a neighbor's house, right? So they were supposed to respond to a crime. They had a call. They went there and knocked on the wrong door. They kept knocking, and when the person didn't open, they burst into the door. And guess what they saw?
They saw two men
doing whatever they were doing.
Right.
And so they took them to jail. And in that ruling, it came down that you couldn't discriminate, especially if they're not doing it in the open. You couldn't discriminate against two doing their own thing. And then we followed that with another case called Obig Defel, which actually legalized marriage between same-sex couples. So there's no restriction but when you go to Ghana or to our African countries, there is a restriction on marriage between same-sex couples.
Yeah, it is in so many countries. I mean, it's illegal. I mean, even in Senegal, for example, you can't. It's like they'll stone
in Gambia,
you.
they killed you.
Yeah,
right.
You can't
Right.
do it.
So how do we kind of
right
reconcile these things? Right. There are people who are being born with so many feminine body organs. There are people who are being born with both sex on them, right? So genetically, they are not programmed to be, the binary type of men and women that we know. And so how do you, as a community, and so this is, I know for in the African community, this is a very touchy subject.
It is, yeah.
So how do we cast those people out completely?
Yeah.
Because of our laws and what we do, our practices, they stay in the closet.
Right.
They hide and do their things. But is that a way for human beings to live? I mean, those are questions we should be asking as we, of the future, think about some of the laws that we have back home. So those are some of the restrictions, but the ones that I've just talked about are the substantive restriction, the procedural types.
Right.
But there are also some substantive ones, right? Like the same-sex one that we just talked about. What else?
We talked about same-sex. We talked
religion.
about poverty.
Religion is another one. You can restrict someone from marrying from a different religion. I mean, that is also constitutionally prohibited.
Right. Right.
What else? Now, how about bigamy? Can you marry multiple?
That's a huge question.
Right.
Well, that is people a lot, depending on who you ask.
Right.
If you ask me, I'm going to say no. If you have somebody else, they're going to say yes. So this question, it is something that is just everybody. It just seems like it's depending on how you're feeling or where you come from or what you think. It's just so many. But we know legally here, the country that we live in, it is not legal.
Right.
We know it is not legal. But tell us about that.
Yeah. So
what do we not know?
No single state in the United States allows that. Matter of fact, they have both civil and criminal restrictions on polygamism and bigamism, right? So you couldn't marry multiple, right? Now, what if you marry multiple in a traditional customary marriage in Ghana, and then you find yourself in the United States? Would you be criminally prosecuted for that?
I want to know that.
No, you wouldn't.
So you wouldn't. So that is true. I mean, you wouldn't.
Yeah,
because
you are not.
You're not coming with your. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess
you are not going here trying to ask for blessing or changing. You're not getting, what do you call it? A marriage license here unless you're trying to bring them both here, then that wouldn't be accepted, right? Yeah. And also, of course, when we file tax return, we have to disclose whether we are married, filing joint.
Right.
That would also be kind of problematic. But
so just on that one, so that means, well, I guess it is, if it is in Africa, it is in Africa, it's in Ghana, in Togo, whatever, and you have marriage license there, you can really, you bring it here, and the girl's not here or the woman is not here. It really doesn't serve you anything here. So if you are free to marry somebody else, even though you have that, because you can't really you don't have to disclose it, right? So you can legally marry another person here and still have that one there, because we don't have a law that law that's against it.
So you are actually veering into the criminal aspect, right? Okay. So the criminal requirement says that if you were to marry a second person, right, without knowing that your prior marriage is properly dissolved. And this usually happens where we file all the papers that we are divorced, but
then it's really not.
We don't know what happens, and one other person went and actually got married to another person.
Right.
Okay. before the paperwork from the court sanctioning that divorce comes in, you can be criminally prosecuted, but you will win that criminal fight because you don't have the intent.
Because you didn't know. The whole point
You're not
is you
doing it
didn't do it on
intentionally.
purpose. That's the thing. You didn't do it
Exactly.
on purpose. Okay.
But the one you're describing, like you know that you have somebody in Africa and you are
Then
here
that's
trying
intent.
to marry again,
That is, you know.
then the intent requirement, you will meet the intent requirement for criminal prosecution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just I'm glad I brought that up because we clarified that if you do it intentionally, it is criminal. If I don't know how you wouldn't know that you are married and then you get here and I don't know how, but if you don't know that the divorce is not final, then you are not going to be
it happens a lot of the time where
it does,
people don't necessarily know that they are still in the old marriage. Let's say you found your spouse. One of the things that will cause a divorce, that you can file a divorce for, one of the reasons for divorce could be that your spouse abandoned the marital home, right? And that abandonment could mean that he's gone and you can't find him. So what happens then? If you're married, are you criminally likely to be prosecuted?
That's what we need to know, because the people, you are gone, you can't find him to sign. That's why you can get the court to serve them to sign. But if you can't find them, what do you do?
Well, if you find them again, you can do so. Let's say there's this saying that you need two people to agree to marry, but really need only one person to divorce. So you don't need him or her in order to divorce him. You can file, the application by yourself, or you can file the claim by yourself, or the complaint, and get him divorced. If he doesn't come to answer, you'll be granted a divorce. But as that is happening, if you get married again and this man shows up and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm married to this person," then there is trouble. I'm going to plug my computer. I think I'm losing my...
So guys, this is it. So this is the question that I always ask. The man left and he's refusing to give you a divorce. He's gone. He's telling you, he's saying that he's not going to give you this divorce, and you are asking for this divorce, and he's nowhere to be found. So he's saying that if you can, the court can grant you your divorce. The court can grant you your divorce, but if he doesn't, if he comes back 5 years later and you are in this happy marriage now, he's like, "Oh, I am back, honey, I'm home." What do you do? What do you do that? But I really think that, Alfred, if that happens in that scenario, you are gone, and I did everything, I signed my part, and the court knows this, then I shouldn't be in trouble. If you come back 5 years later, then I shouldn't be in trouble because I honestly filed. So I disclosed this, that you disappear. We couldn't find you. So I don't think you should be, penalized for that.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to the intent, right? So the question is, are you doing it with the intention? Are you intentionally getting married because you are the one running away from the home? You know?
Right.
It could be that one spouse that decides, "I'm not going home for the next 2 years." There's some states, if you don't show up in your marital home for 2 years,
certain time
that's the ground for divorce.
They deem you for divorce. So this is also important for us to just know the laws around where we are living. So know the laws in your state. For example, like, this is not even marriage. Like, in some state, even if you live in a house, for example, is in an example, and even if your name is not on a house for a certain time period, you have rights under a certain thing. So it is important that when we move into a state, we move into a city, we move into a country, it's important to know the laws in that country. So it is we just encouraging everybody to, wherever you are right now, just know the laws. Even if you've been married years ago, still know the laws.
And then let me just throw in this nuance quickly, right? Let's say you cohabitate with a person. Cohabitation meaning that you haven't yet married the person. You just live together. Pennsylvania also, I believe so. We can double check that. Pennsylvania recognizes people who cohabitate but who hold themselves as married. It doesn't matter whether you've actually gone for a marriage certificate or not. So there was this case where this man was married, left the wife, not divorced yet, but started cohabitating with another woman. Then travel with that woman to Pennsylvania and will stay in a hotel for maybe 2-3 days on their way to wherever they were going. And then when they came back, they stayed in Pennsylvania again. And each time they go to the hotel, they sign as husband and wife.
Okay.
So the man died.
Ooh.
And the cohabitant woman won a part of the property because she claims she's wife. And it was ruled that yes, she's wife because she and the man, according to Pennsylvania law, are wives, or husband and wife.
That is a messed up. That is so messed up.
So
that is so messed up because I mean, and it's 2 different states. So
yeah, it's 2 different states.
It's 2 different. So the laws are different in both states. That
Correct.
man is a wicked man. I can tell that. So but you know,
why is he a wicked man?
Because he's just he's just wrong. He's just wrong.
I mean,
wrong.
There are things happening in relationships, so I wouldn't blame him necessarily. Yeah.
No, I anyway. Okay, so because I cannot give that to him because knowingly, remember that state has a different laws, and he knows the laws. He knows, and I'm sure that's why.
I think they didn't plan necessarily to write on their hotel forms that they are
husband and wife.
I thought they were just doing it not knowing. I mean, well,
we can speak for them.
That could be they planned it, you know.
You cannot speak for them. You cannot knowingly know that you are married to another woman and then go to a hotel room and sign with a different woman as a husband and wife and not know what you were doing, unless there was something else. I don't know, but either way, he was wrong and she was wrong.
So the moral of the lesson is when you go to the hotel, don't sign husband and wife.
That is not the moral lesson. The moral lesson from me is do not have a husband and then bring another woman to a hotel. That's
well,
the moral
that too.
That's the moral lesson for me. Okay. So we saw the restrictions. So thank you very much for this list. This is awesome. And I know that we have to end with annulments.
Yes.
We talked about just disclosure last Sunday when I spoken to Tugby about annulment, traditional annulment. He's super, he was like, no. So basically what he was saying is in order for you, and we agreed, in order for you to go through all of this and give, the dowry and go through the asking of a hand, go through all of this craziness, be sure. Don't just do it and like, oh no, I don't want you. So anyway, he was against it. He did not like that. He said that we should do our total investigation, do a background, and make sure. Don't just go with your heart, like we were saying. Go with the heart and the head. It has to work together. So before you do that, so here annulment on this civil annulment. What do you have to tell us about annulment?
Well, so annulment meaning the marriage didn't occur at all, right? So we call it is void ab initio, which means that marriage didn't occur at all.
It never happened.
This used to be, I mean, I like discussing annulment at the same time that we discuss divorce because the two sort of are related in so many ways. It used to be traditionally that you can only divorce when one person is at fault. We call it fault divorces.
Okay.
But after, I believe, in the 60s, going to the 70s or so, the rules have changed where, the courts now allow what we call no fault divorce, meaning one partner doesn't have to be at fault in order for a divorce to occur. We can just decide that, okay, we don't want to be.
Agreement. Okay.
So at those times that, they had this historically fault divorces, which means one partner has to be cheating or doing something bad, abusing you in order to get the divorce. The way around getting divorced without finding fault is through annulment. To say the marriage didn't happen at all. Okay. What are the grounds? What makes marriage not happen at all? If you marry your sister,
okay,
that marriage
is not a valid marriage.
It's void ab initio.
Okay,
it's void from the jump, right?
That is alokpli. That's
That is
incest.
ALFRED. Yeah. That's ALFRED. But I mean, there are other things that can cause marriages to be voidable, but not void. Voidable meaning that, let's say I marry somebody, right? We are not divorced. And I marry another person. That marriage, second marriage, depending on the states, they can say it's void or it's voidable.
Okay.
So voidable meaning that if I don't want to be in it, I can get out of it.
Okay.
Void meaning it doesn't actually even exist from the jump. Okay. What if the person you married first died?
Okay. If that person died, then you don't have any obligation to her.
Then your second marriage is no longer void.
Right. Right. So wait. So if you are married to this person, you have not divorced the person. Is that what you're saying? Or you divorced the person?
You haven't divorced them. So we are doing bigamy now. Bigamy. Let's go back to bigamy.
We don't want that's a bigamy. It's another topic here. So if you and then you marry this I see what you're saying. It is voidable. I get that it's voidable, and you can void this because it can't be valid because you're already married to this person. And
then all of a sudden the first person you married died.
If they die, then fine.
Then your marriage is no longer voidable.
Right. Then it can be valid now.
Your new marriage has become automatically valid.
Right. That's why there shouldn't be a new marriage. So it shouldn't be a new marriage until the first marriage is not there anymore. So, okay. All right. So how long? Because right now you say something that is the key. You said, divorce, there's a annulment to prevent if you don't want to have a divorce, then it is going to be, instead of being a divorce, it's an annulment, right? So how long can you say that this is an annulment versus a divorce? What is the time frame?
So an annulment would be that the relationship didn't even actually happen. So it's a little separate from divorce, but I like talking about it together with divorce because, the fact being that divorces in the past were only fault-based divorces. Somebody has to be at fault. But we can go in. So the only way people actually get around divorce if their spouse is not at fault is to look for other things that will qualify for annulment, right? That will qualify for annulment. An example would be she didn't turn 18 at the time we married. No, some states allow marriage at 16. But if you like, you can shop states. You can go to a state that says you only have to marry at 18. And then file your divorce, right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
And say it's based on annulment. So there isn't necessarily a durational, it's whatever. We can be married for 20 years. And then usually this is how annulment comes in. It comes in when that rich guy died. And the sugar mommy or the let's say there's
the younger wife.
Okay, let's put it this way, right? Okay, so there's a younger wife, right? Whose husband died, and she wants to inherit. And this is when the family will come in and say, that marriage was not valid. These cases don't happen when people are actually alive. It happens when people die. They say, that marriage is not valid because you were 17 when she married you.
Okay, guys, Alfred, hold on. All of you who are online, we need to know who you are. Please let us know who you are. Justin, I know Justin is online. Justin's the only person that I saw say hello. Justin, bonsoir. But anyone else who's online, please let us know who you are. Ask a question if you have one, but let us know where you're joining from, please. So I and Alfred, your commentaire manya fike ameke le kame fike mile joindre mia so alo ne mi do question ami so do commentaire amena mi lo. Merci beaucoup. So my understanding before, prior to this, right? I thought annulment only happen in certain time period. Like if it's a year later or 6 months later, you can't call an annulment. It has to be a divorce. That's what I thought.
No.
So now this is a new to me that even if I wait till my sugar daddy died, I can still say that it can still be called an annulment. I did not know that. So that is very much interesting.
Yeah, let me add some nuances. I mean, there's little nuances here and there. How about children who were born in a marriage that is void ab initio? Can they inherit from their father?
That's a good question.
Traditionally, they cannot. They are called bastards.
Right.
But we've abolished all that.
Right.
So those children are legitimate now. I mean, although the marriage is not a valid marriage. So those who have girlfriends on the side doing whatever you're doing, your children will inherit from you. Be mindful. Those whose marriages are annulled because their wives were younger, and if you decide to leave the woman, the only thing that you benefit from an annulment, especially if the person was younger or for whatever reason, is that you don't pay alimony.
Oh, really?
Spousal support is eliminated. Yeah, because there's no marriage for spousal support.
So this will be just up to you. Hopefully you are a good person, you're a good father, you're a good man, you're just going to support the children, but legally you're not obligated to pay for child support. If the
child support you pay, but not alimony. Alimony is what you give to the woman.
Yeah. So I get that. So that's what I'm glad you clarified that, because I was thinking while you were saying it, I was thinking about child support and the children as well. So alimony, yes, we do know it covers the person itself, her expenses,
the wife or the husband. Yeah.
But I'm glad that even though that happens, you still are responsible for the children. So that's important to know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is very, very, and I know this is very interesting. This is a very enlightening. I learned a lot, and I know that our viewers, whether you join later or right now, you are learning a lot, and I hope that you are getting something. You are noting some things down, and you are going to make some changes. So we talked about premarital controversies. We talked about that. We talked about premarital agreement. We talked about that. We talked about restrictions. And we talked about entry into a marriage, and we also talk about annulment combined with divorce, a little bit of divorce. So if we have more about divorce, probably next time when we come back, we are going to discuss that. But guys, thank you very much for joining us. ALFRED, before I do my last comment, I do want to, ask you, what do you have to say to people? What is your advice to people?
Before I give advice, let
what
me
do you
also
want them to take away from here as well? I do want
definitely.
To them.
I'm going to zero in on that, but before that, I want to make some announcements that every now and then, of course, I know you are exploring the family angles a lot. So, there is going to be a discussion on divorce. There's going to be a discussion on child support. There's going to be a discussion perhaps on spousal support and distribution of assets. Like, how do we divide those properties? Let's say you don't have all this premarital agreement thing we discussed today. You come to divorce. How do we divide those properties? We want to kind of explore. We're going to explore that at some point, right?
Right.
Both traditionally and in terms of laws in the United States and maybe elsewhere in Ghana. Now, not only that, we want to talk about death.
Yeah.
When people die, what happened to their properties? Whether they have a will or not.
Right.
If they don't have a will, what can they do to protect those properties so that it goes to who they want the property to go to?
Right.
Can you disinherit your wife? All kinds of things that happen when people die will be a major area that's perhaps, if we get time and as we go along, we would want to touch on those as well. But yes, here's the takeaway I want. This is what I want you to take away from this. young women, men, or even adults who are in relationships, some of them who are now about to enter into relationship, it is important that, first of all, you love the person, but secondly, that you think about what happens when things don't go right.
Yeah.
It is better to think about it earlier and have those papers done and put on the side before you get into those problems, because you know, separation is not the easiest thing. Your head is not clear. That is not the best time to be doing. I mean, you're gonna make lawyers rich, but the best way would be to actually do it before. And when you are doing it, please both have separate lawyers.
Right.
The wife should have his own lawyer. The woman should have the man should also have his own lawyer.
Right.
Otherwise, if you're using both one lawyer, then that lawyer needs to explain to you who they are representing.
Right.
Maybe that I'm representing your wife. So you need to go find your lawyer. If you say you can't find your own lawyer because you can't afford it, majority of the time is because the other partner can't afford it.
Right.
It becomes incumbent on the partner who is bringing the agreement, perhaps to help the other one, the other partner, afford a lawyer.
Right.
Now, if it happens that you guys are going to just use one lawyer, then you want all the terms read to you, explained to you. Because so many of the court cases, what you will see is that, you know, somebody will get into this agreement and they've read it, but they don't understand it, and they sign it because they're just trying to sign it to please the other partner. I want to get married to this guy. I love him. We've been in a relationship for the last 6 years. I'm not about to say I'm not signing this agreement and all of a sudden I can marry the man of my dreams. So you go ahead and sign something that kind of writes your rights away. But even when that happened, we've discussed today that there may be unconscionability sort of considerations. It may be that it's not reasonable, it's not fair, it's not fully disclosed to you. You sign it not voluntarily, etc. Those defenses exist for you. But you don't want to get to that. Before you can even raise those defenses, you have to go hire a lawyer. So it's just best to do it right from the beginning. Get the lawyer who's representing both of you to read all the terms to you and tell you what they imply. What are the implications of each of those terms?
Right.
So it's really important. And secondly, if you want to marry somebody who is from a different race and the parents are giving you a hard time, know that constitutionally they cannot do that. So you can actually have a case against them if you want to. If you want to sue your future mother-in-law or father-in-law,
I would say
trust me.
against that. I am against that. Do not do that, because that's terrible. Because you're going to suffer from that, you know, in that marriage.
I mean, if they want to play dirty, we all start playing dirty from day one, right?
Do it. Just my advice is pray, but don't take them. I will. No. Because that's terrible. Don't do it.
All right. So everything we discussed today, it's not legal advice. So, you know, by all means, consult your lawyer if you need more clarification. This is just we having fun trying to explain some nuances of how marriage.
Something to think about, just to wake us up. We want to wake us up that you do have those choices. You have the options. So exercise your right, exercise those choices. That's what we are trying to do.
And when you want to divorce and you think divorce might give you trouble, look for other things like, is it possible for you to use annulments?
Annulment, right. Check your states. Check your states.
And when you go to hotels, remember, don't be writing names.
You know what? That I'm gonna leave it alone.
Even if it's your friend, you go to a hotel and you're just trying to pretend and say, "Oh, we are husband and wife."
Don't do it, because that can be used against you in a court of law.
It can be used against you. Most of the time, when it's being used against you is when you are already dead.
Right.
Your property distribution, because you're not there to speak for yourself. So your property distribution is at stake. Your children are not able to inherit from you properly because, remember, if you die, and we're going to talk about this, if you die and somebody is your spouse, they are entitled to 50% of your property.
Oh, it's just
also 50. Depending on the state, huh?
I said it's just 50. Okay.
Yeah. Now there are nuances to that, right? If you were to have if that woman were to have, let's say if it's a woman who survived you and you're the husband, and the woman has a baby from a different relationship, then they get 225,000 first, and then $33,000 of everything remaining. But these are, there's so many sort of nuances to that. We'll talk about that when we talk about our estate planning, wills, and all that stuff. So stay tuned.
So is that it? You have something else you want to add? Because I want to.
No, that's it. I mean, I'd be here talking all night, but
I'm sure. I am sure. We want to spare our viewers, but now, ALFRED, a Fogan from Ghana, Accra, he sent me this. He said requirement for marriage under ordinance, and he said one is the applicant may obtain the prescribed declaration form completed. Right, they have to complete that to the with the assistant of the marriage register at the assistant. And then he said question of consent declaration for consider. This is in Ghana though.
Ghana, yeah. He's talking about marriage under the ordinance.
Right, under ordinance. He said question of consent declaration needs to be done. Declaration and all of that consideration, like we were talking, has to be done. He said, have the couple ever been married? So that's what, yes or no, you have to complete that. A whole bunch of stuff here. And then he said it's a must for the couple to be present at the registration. Obviously, the two of you has to be there. And then the couple must be at least 18 years of age, he said, that or above, to be legally considered. And then the two witnesses are to be provided from each side. So you have to have witnesses for each side. So he said the time frame to be celebrated, it is 30 days after the date. So this is what he sent me. I just like in Ghana, this is what
there is celebratory requirement that you have to celebrate the marriage. So that's where the officiating comes in. It could be done by a pastor, whatever. But remember, Ghana is only one state and they only have one law. But when you come to the United States, we have 50, almost 54 more states or so. So it changes. Matter of fact, Alabama doesn't require ceremony no more. You can just go register that we are married.
Hey, I like that.
Okay. So different states do different things. And the age requirements may be different from one state to another. That is why you can go for annulments in different states. So people do shop around for that kind of thing. But there is something in the Constitution called the Food, Faith, and Credit Clause. What it says is, say a ruling or a marriage in one state or a court ruling or a contract in one state has to be recognized in the other states. So the other states have to give it full credit, right? So if we marry in state A and we come to state B to say we want to divorce, state A has to hold that marriage valid, right? But you find your creative lawyers, they'll find a way to get around it.
They'll find a way to get around it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So yes, that's why I was making sure this thing I'm reading to you, Fogan sent me, it is in Ghana.
It's correct. It's correct. Yeah.
So guys, thank you, ALFRED. I appreciate you for coming in, for staying in. We're gonna come back and carry on. There's more to this than that. So be prepared, be ready. I know you're already ready, but we'll call up on you in the near future. So thank you very much. I appreciate you spending this time with us today. I appreciate your information. I thank you for doing this. So guys, what I'm going to do now, next week, we are going to bring a Foco C. Is going to come back and we are going to dive into, because we tried to do this before the end of September, because my goal was to focus September for Siana, but a Foco fee is going to come back so we can discuss Siana project. I want him to come back. I want him to give him that opportunity to come back and do that. So he's going to come back. We are planning on him coming back. We are going to discuss. There are certain important, very, very important topics, project that we're going to discuss. I want to know the answers, that, the process and all of that. And you guys will want, because you are supporting Siana, you have been donating and you've been there. It is important for us to discuss certain things around, project in Ghana, in Togo, how those projects are selected. What do we do after that? And all of that. So we're going to be discussing that with a Foco C on Sunday. So I do want you to share this, share the information with everyone. Even if you don't have a link, just come to Siana TV and you'll see the schedule. You can see the show is scheduled. Or you go to Chatting with Nicole. If you go to Chatting with Nicole, you can see the program there. You just join us, and then, you know, let us learn together and let us do this together. But I thank you very much for hanging in with us. I thank you for hanging in through me, through the whole technical issues last week, but you know, and the week after that. But thank you for being here. I just encourage you guys to share this link, share this information, because we can't keep it for ourselves. We're doing it so we can help one another, so that we can fall into these situations. So it's important for us to share. So share the information with everyone you know. Subscribe to Sienna TV if you have not already. Subscribe to Chatting with Nicole if you have not already. But make sure that the word is out there. Please share with everyone, and let us all come online and do this together. When you join, please just send me a comment. We want to know who you are. We want to stay interactive. And today I only see Justin is the only one who commented, but I know there's more than just Justin on the call. On the call online. So let us know where you are joining from. You don't have to hide. You know, it's good to know who you are, your support. So let us know who you are. And so I thank you very much. Miato mdakpe na miakpotabe mi va kame kodo mi egbe a mdakpe na mi. Mdekpo mle globe na dimanche prochain focus le java mila pomposo si anabe projet onti. Mila discuter si anabe projet. Donc mbena de mi invité à mesia me ke mim jesu wa même lien tocha mi sododa mesia me. Parce que mi dola supporter mi anono ne mi akpla nu yo de kareka mi le fion mi anono noye. Donc mi so fion mi partager coup mesia me dimanche à 20h ne mi le lome alo Ghana alo Bénin, c'est 20h 20h dimanche. Ne mi le Atlanta alo mi le, you know, USA America, c'est 16h EST. Mi ava kame ne mi a discuter ne mi a plan nou voa ne mi do kame a mi lo mi na mi anya fike mi soa meke mi nya game a mi la mila wonu ya kudomi mila na manya mia fike mi le joindre soa. So l'important be mia partager voa ewe kem le ja jouer ya ewe dem ke le jouer sans voa ngba trop jouer ke ne mi nya ewe ke be nya mi so do commentaire a me na mi expliquer na me ma se gomi lo me also video a so do ramle. Donc mi expliquer na me manya nu ke be nya ewe a Georgie na me no intéressant voa nyem se gomo. Donc, ma joué na mi ne mia expliquer nam après ça. Donc, mlejibe mia wonu ya. Et Justin, it says there's another Justin from Ghana. Okay, so I have two Justins on the call. So I have this one. It says it's Justin from Canada. I'm sorry. So Justin from Canada. Okay, that's the same Justin. I thought it was two different Justin. So Justin, bonsoir. Hello. Merci beaucoup pour le support. Thank you very much for your you know, support all the time. So I appreciate you. So I wake him la joue ne mi de gome a ne mi se gome a mi ana manya mi a expliquer na wake benya voa mi no kame ma tro joue na mi voa mi ana ni sesere mi ato fofo nye dada nyo mi na ni sesere mi adogo dimanche prochain les filles Sienna TV Chatting with Nicole les Afrique UTG mjibe mi ava mi invité mi ato ni mi adogo les filles dimanche passé ma one you know, maone no mi akota ne no ku mi akota mi adogo dimanche prochain akpena mi kakalo. So guys, if you are in Ghana and you know what dance, the dance that I played earlier, myself and you know ALFRED, we couldn't understand the dance. We don't know what that dance means. If you know what this dance is, I'm gonna play it again. If you know what it is, explain it to me. So that we know what it is. If Togby was here, he would have explained it because he was at that event. But he's not here. So I want you guys to be interactive and let me know. But I also want you to share this link with everyone you know. Like I said, subscribe to both channels and be here on you know, if you're in Ghana and Togo, it's 8 p.m. Eastern, your time. If you're in Atlanta or you're in the US, it is 4 p.m. Eastern time. So please, I need your support. I need you interactive. I need you to stay interactive. And I thank you very much for hanging in with us. You know, ALFRED gave you the takeaway of the conversation that we have today. And I hope and I pray that this conversation, these topics help you one way or the other. And I want you to share it with other people because you never know who it will help. You never know who is in this situation right now, and this could just help them. So I encourage you guys to share with everyone, subscribe to the channel again, but stay safe and blessed. And I'll see you I'll see you on Sunday at 4 or 8 p.m. Ghana time or Togo time. I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
Watu motoro denne sasiame ya ene jitwa onso unduro to ya do jaba apele kan ko pleso mo ni ni ade nduro yede ni ba ogwa le foire alimentaire le ba kadamia ademedesi adojo ombe eke ko akomo la apele ti ma gbade ti so bi de ti magbara de ti wo ada onpele de ni ado be onpele ni o pata ni foire alimentaire le bi na goma de bi so ga so ko ka wala ko mi abo tuku tabate so la de jento ele akite jori haba la kima abra tuku so wala ni ko tia ni ta tena ni bobo ele ke bobo ta no mi promo wa to ati ko jo mele ni brasserie bebe ko to pata ko be mama no fa